What are we talking about, Pierce? ASMR. What? No, we're not doing ASMR. We're doing feminism, okay? We're doing feminism. God damn it. All right, so this is going to be a 2 or maybe 3-part series. I'm thinking of 3-part on feminism. And right now we have Zia.
Hello.
And yeah, we're gonna have a nice discussion about feminism. Hopefully we all have our nice ideas on the table. So Zia, thank you so much for coming and helping us out on what feminism is, giving your perspective on it. What do you think feminism is about?
Like, it is a word, and it means that believing in the equality between men and women.
What do you think equality means? Like, what type of equality do you think is what feminism's talking about?
Well, so it depends, like, this has to do with, like, normative frameworks and, like, what you believe equality means. Can be, like, if you're, like, egalitarian, like, you believe that it's either, like, opportunity, like, equality of opportunity or equality of, like, outcome. Mm-hmm. But I think that the way that we think about it typically is the equality of opportunity, and that's how we look at, like, affirmative action, which is, like, left liberal egalitarianism. Yeah, so I think that it's mostly about equality of opportunity between men and women, and that involves accepting that there are societal predispositions to how we treat women and how we treat men in that respect as well, and that it's about accepting that there are disadvantages ascribed to women just for the fact that they are women, and accepting this and working to try to change the societal norm of how we think about that, and also, like, working towards accepting that women are equal and that women are, like, just as capable of, like, many things, just as capable of being good parents as men, just as capable of being good bosses, just as capable of being as good in charge of projects and whatnot.
I think for me, feminism is all about, like, I mean, it shouldn't, your gender should not be a matter of focus in terms of, like, how I should hire you, how should I treat you. I should just, like, treat you as an individual, and, like, and I should look at, things that are measurable and, like, can be, like, I don't think gender has a rational, value in, like, in the workplace. Would you agree with that? Like, does it really, like, just because you're a woman, I'm gonna put you in this position, or because you're a man, I'm gonna put you in this position, just the fact that you're a man. Like, I don't think that makes any sense, because the girl can be better than the other guy, or the guy can be,
Yeah, it's about looking at, people's abilities rather than gender, but it's easy to fall into a trap of being like, well, then gender doesn't matter. But like I was saying before, like, it matters in the sense that we do treat men and women differently. So when looking at whether you should hire someone, looking them at as a whole person does include looking at, like, their experiences, and those experiences have been affected by their gender. So just, like, I totally agree with what you were saying, but just, like, it's important to keep in mind that, like, based on your circumstances, like, you might have different, like, statistics on your resume, but that could also not be because, like, you weren't given the same opportunities.
Would you, how would you, so you're right now in college and you're going to go into the workforce, workplace, work in a workplace environment, what sort of an environment would you want? Like, what would you want the company to ensure that, shit like sexual harassment or, like, sexual assault or, like, that kind of things does not happen?
I think it's important to have, like, zero tolerance policies on sexual harassment, in that I think a lot of men, like, in particular, get away with a lot of things because women are either not able to talk about it, in that their bosses might be men that have also participated, or even if they do, it's kind of a, like, slap on the wrist, like, next time, don't do this, gotcha, like, buddy. So I think that in designing women and everyone friendly workplaces, it's having, like, an important known policy of being zero tolerance on that kind of behavior, and also being able to have an environment where this can be openly talked about, and it's not, like, some taboo thing that, like, just happens to some women, and that it's in a universal experience of men and women to have people talk to them disrespectfully, like, assume things based on how they look or what they say or, like, how they talk and stuff like that. So
you said about sexual harassment. How would you define sexual harassment? What would be an example of that some people might not like, would disagree? Like I'm sure like many people have like come up to you and said like that's not sexual harassment, but for you that is sexual harassment.
Well, I mean, it depends what framework you're talking about it in, and that there are cases of precedent, and if we're talking about like how the laws work.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, like sexual harassment is anything that you like that I don't like. I find this question interesting.
No, because like I'm asking this because like for example a frat boy might say, oh that was like a frat boy or someone who's like
people who think things are compliments that aren't.
That compliments that aren't, but
like
think that's what I'm trying.
Screaming at you on the street, not a compliment. Sexual harassment.
Yeah, those things. Or sometimes advancing or flirting in a way that's like really it's more coercive. Like I remember this one time. Crazy Stupid Love.
Yes.
Okay. You know that scene with Ryan Gosling, who was like he was at a bar and sees a girl, and then he comes up to them, and Ryan Gosling says, "Are you attracted to me?" And then the girl says, "No, I'm not attracted to you." And Ryan Gosling says, "Yes, you are." And like that's so. I mean, yeah, the scene is funny, but like when you apply that to the real life and with that kind of aggression, and you amplify that with toxic masculine feeling. Would you not say those people sort of like see it in a very different way than you in terms of sexual? Well, that wasn't sexual harassment. That was like me complimenting the girl. That was me,
Well, I do think that people do see it that way, and that's how
Mm-hmm.
they think that behavior of talking to women in disrespectful ways appropriate, but it's just like those people are not thinking about it from the other side and lack empathy, because like many men who go to NYU specifically have come up to me and talked to me about how they had never been catcalled in their like hometown, but like walking through the East Village, it's not uncommon for men to also be catcalled by men, because like people like men and like it's like just as disrespectful, but because it doesn't happen to men as often, I think that they don't internalize that kind of behavior is hurtful. In that when you're a woman, you experience getting catcalled for the first time when you're like 12 or 13. And it's a very weird feeling of having somebody sexualize you when you're not a sexual being to them. And I think that just it's hard to understand that if it hasn't happened to you, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, and like you can empathize with people that you haven't had that direct experience. But I think that particularly because women are encouraged not to talk about these kinds of things, that it can be difficult for men to hear the perspectives and like an honest view that isn't just like prescribed as like women being like crazy or like too emotional or all this bullshit.
What if we twist this thing around? Let's say if a guy was, sexually harassed, in my imagination, I don't think if a guy was sexually harassed, like seriously sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, would you think that they would react the same way as girls, or would there be a different way of like, would they just like they wouldn't care about it, or they would like laugh it off?
So I think this is like a sociocultural question, in that men are taught from a very early age to not have emotions and not care in the same way as women, in that when boys cry when they're like 4, they're told to like suck it up and get up and brush off their knees. But like when girls cry, more typically people are like, oh, are you okay? Like, what are your emotions? Like, talk about what you're feeling. And like men aren't necessarily brought up to think in the same way. So I think that in instances of sexual harassment and assault, men can react differently, but also I think that inherently it's the same kind of experience, and whether whether different people interpret it differently is their own prerogative. Okay. So like, yeah, in some instances, women can also like brush it off and be like, haha, whatever. But it's just, I think, depends on like your culture, how you're brought up, and like how you see sexual assault, because it can also be really interesting to talk about these issues and then like look back on your prior experiences and be like, oh, like that boy at that party, like that was not cool. Now that I've like talked about what this is, or like, like that kind of thing, I think also happens a lot. So it can also be a thing about like not necessarily having gone through it yet or like talked about the issues yet doesn't mean that like they won't, or like boys who are like it was fine won't ever understand.
Okay. All right. Let's stop here. Thank you so much, Zia. Thank you so much, Pierce, for listening to us.
Didn't say
All right.
anything.
I
It's
talked at the beginning.
fine.
Did you
All
say
right.
1 year at least?
Maybe.
No, he did not. I would like to say for the record that Pierce did not help me at all
I was
in this
eating
being
my
the
sandwich. I was hungry. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Take care. Bye.